I'd play music for you guys, but Twitch got mad last time, so I don't do that anymore. Also, got affiliate on Twitch now, so you guys can sub or gift subs now. Don't really know what that means, but feel free to do that. All right, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Great, great. Just trying to get some stuff done today. Hopefully, I can complete it. All right. Cool. So today we're not really going to be doing any. Doing good, Ben. Not really going to be doing any drawing. You should try to take some notes. So we're going to be talking about value and what value is and how to do a value study. So just looking it up on Google, right? You'll find a couple articles and you'll see a bunch of tutorials and stuff like that. Right. So, goodness, pop-ups. Basically, you're talking about, when you're talking about value, you're talking about the saturation of the color, essentially. If you don't know what saturation is, in digital art, there's hue, saturation. What else is there? Hue, saturation, and color and brightness. They all kind of are slightly different. Also, it's essentially like, so if you guys are doing this if you guys draw on traditional pen and paper, that's fine. You can still do a value study. So what is a value study exactly? Well, you essentially take an image, right? And you can do this in GIMP, you can do this in Photoshop, you can do this in anything. I've got these 3 images here from my backyard. All right. What you can do is you can take any image. It can be a photograph, it can be a drawing, it can be a painting, it can be whatever. And essentially the easy way to get these into black and white is to add, use a new layer, fill it completely black, like straight up black, and then set the layer to saturation. And I don't know if Krita has this, but I know Photoshop and I know Clip Studio Paint have it for sure. So basically what you're doing is you're taking all the color out of the image and you're only showing the saturation or the value of those colors. So we can sit here and toggle it, and you can kind of see how much color kind of interferes with your perception of the value. So the value is essentially, like I said, the saturation. So if we look here, Let me zoom in for you. If we look here, this is closer to the bottom of the circle, square, whatever you call this thing, circle, square, color picker. So as you go lower, the saturation is higher. So if you have on the left you have no color, and on the right you have all the color, right? So if we color pick here, that's the reddest red we can get. But if we take that saturation all the way down or up, however you want to think about it, you essentially just have black, pure black, right? Excuse me. So on this left side with no color, up and down this scale is your value. Hold on, let me link the Twitch again. Okay, does anyone have any questions so far? Yeah, so that's why we don't convert it to grayscale, right? That's why we use a saturation layer. It does sometimes have issues converting a color image or canvas into a grayscale image or canvas. That's why we use this saturation layer, which we can play around with as we want. And you can do this with any color too. It doesn't have to be black. Black is just the easiest to see. So we could actually take this and do red, and we can turn this saturation layer into red, and it'll be really weird, but you can do it. All right. So you can also do this, I believe, with a color layer, but I find that the results are generally more or less the same with saturation, and that's more, what do you call it? It's on more programs than a color layer. All right. So in order to do a value study, what you essentially need to do is you need to set up your photographs or your images or whatever. Actually, before we get there, I want to do one more thing. Let's take a look at an example from ArtStation. Oops. Let's just find any image. All right, this image, that's fine. Download that. And I'm going to just open it in its own file. Going to make us a saturation layer. We're going to fill it with black. And you can basically see here that the values, if you look here with all the different colors, all the pretty different colors, the values are not that far off from each other. Even this bright red here is still only a little bit off in value. Let's do another one. So when people are talking about dynamic lighting, they're usually talking about an image with values that are on a wider spectrum of a scale. So this would be considered more dynamic than this one, right? Because this one's scale is only from about, if you color pick this, you can take this, make a new layer, get a brush, make it, just do a little, I need something completely, I need just this hard round brush. There we go, G-Pen. This is as dark as it gets, which is actually pretty dark. And then of course you have light, but that's on the background. But if we're just talking about the figure itself, About the lightest spot we have is probably here. So if we look at these on the wheel down here, they're pretty spread out. However, because most of the image is white, it's slightly less dynamic as far as, and if you look at the lighting here, it doesn't really even, the lighting on the character makes sense, but it doesn't really make sense with the background, but that's okay. But in this one, your darkest dark is literally straight up black. Oops, new layer. And your lightest value is probably this lightning, which is, honestly, they're about the same scale. So what you do when you do a value study is you look at this kind of stuff and you try to figure out where everything is in terms of value that makes it look the way that it looks. So if we look at specifically this character, right? You can see that this value here and this value here are not that far off. But they're basically painting, I mean, they are painting. They're painting it in such a way that it looks semi three-dimensional. It's not that high res of an image. So what you want to do when you do a value study, Barb, you can't access Google. That's odd. Have you seen Impression Sunrise limited value scale? All right, we'll take a look at this. All right, so this is by Monet. So looking at this, it looks pretty warm. We'll do our saturation layer. And you can see that it's all really, really close. Of course, this isn't that high of a resolution image, but you get the point. So generally, when you look at something with value on it, the first thing, that's not really a good example. The first thing you generally look at are the areas with the lightest values. So when we look at this image, the things that stick out to us are, sorry, I'm using a mouse, so don't make fun of me. The areas that generally stick out to me, at least, are the lighter, the more contrasting areas. So this guy's face, this here, this. We're looking at these things kind of first because they have a lighter, more of a contrast with their own figure. So this right here sticks out. All this lightning effect sticks out. But these guys down here, they are not necessarily the focal point of the image. They are there, but since their value scale is limited, they don't stick out to our eyes as much. All right. So going back to how to do a value study. So I showed you how to extract color from an image using a saturation layer. And then what you do next is get you a white box or any color box. It doesn't really matter. It could be red for all we care. Yeah, let's make it red, whatever. It doesn't matter. So we have our box. And then what you need to do is, without color picking, we need to go in here and we need to kind of eye it. We need to go, okay, specifically on this image, we're not worried about these yet. My lightest value is kind of about here, not quite pure white. Actually, we do have a pure white from that chair. So we'll do that, and then we'll get our pen. We'll give ourselves a little swatch. I'm going to clip this layer. Oops. All right, so we'll give ourselves a swatch. And then we try to find the darkest, which is right around here, I think. So we'll find that color, or that value, which I think is around there. And then we'll give ourselves a swatch at the bottom. And then we try to find 3 to 5 more major values in the image. So from the top, we have kind of here. Here. Then about here. So now we have all of our values that we're going to use. You kind of want to limit it. You don't want to use the entire almost infinite amount of values up and down, right? I mean, I know it's not infinite. There's only like 100, but we want to limit ourselves to this amount. Yeah, you should eyeball it at this point. The reason you eyeball it is because you're challenging yourself to see the values. If you just eyedropper it, your brain's gonna be lazy, and you're not gonna see them as easily when you look at something, right? So once you do this more and more, as you do this more and more, eyeballing it will help you kind of figure out, like, oh, I need this girl's hair to be red, but I don't want the value to be too high, so I'm going to kind of set it down here, and then I'm going to draw her hair or whatever, right? Okay, so once you have your swatches for your values, you can make them pretty, you can squash them down, you can make them closer together, whatever you want to do. So and I apologize, I don't have a tablet hooked up today. I'm doing the best I can with the mouse. Alright, so now we have our gradient scale of all the values we're going to use, and we can actually get rid of the excess that we don't need. Okay, so this is everything we're going to use for this image. So what you got to do is you can start with a box, or if you're on paper, just a page. You kind of want to get it the same size roughly. And then, I think I did that on the wrong layer. Excuse me. And then what you do is you take these values, and like I said, I'm going to do this with a mouse, so don't judge me too much. You're going to find the common value, like something you can base the rest of the image on. So let's start with this right here, which is about there. And we're going to block in that shape in the middle there. And then we kind of fill out the rest. Oops. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Then you're like, all right, cool. I got this value for this shape. And then you kind of just block out the rest of them. So got this here. We know it's going to be kind of that color throughout. Then we get this background here, which is roughly, we'll go with this. We'll say this starts roughly here. And I kind of tend to zoom in a little bit mentally whenever I do stuff like this. So a lot of the stuff like the sky I won't get to because I don't know. It's just my brain works weird. I'm working on it. So that's roughly that. And then actually there's some rocks back there that are kind of like so. They're a little darker than that, but it'll be okay. And then let's see what else we have here. We could block in this awning with this. I will look at questions in a second. Oh, that's too bright. And sorry for my poor mouse art skills. They're pretty bad. So this is a this is a pretty rudimentary value study, but that's okay because, like I said, I'm using a mouse, and even if yours look like this too, it's okay because you're learning how to see value like you haven't seen it before. Like when you look at these two side by side, even though one is obviously terrible, you can still get that this is a sort of painting of what we're looking at. So this is actually needs to be lighter over here. So I kind of screwed that up over there, but no big deal. So yeah, you basically redraw the picture with a limited value, right? And as you get better, you can add more and more values, and you're basically just repainting the image in monochrome. Anyone have any questions thus far? Yep. In fact, that's when you're coloring or painting, this is valuable to both. Like I showed earlier, you get some anime art here. They use value. This painting right here, they use a lot of value. And even like this Monet painting, right? Even though the values are super crushed together, they're like, where on the scale? I'm going to color pick because I don't have time to eye this. Oops. From there to, say, there. I mean, that's not that far apart. Yeah, I mean, if I were using a tablet, it might be placement of forms. But you're more worried about the value at this stage. Give me just 1 second. I had to sneeze like real bad. All right. So I'm going to pull up. Right, they are hard to distinguish in monochrome. That's why we do this. Right? So the importance of distinguishing value and color is that, yeah, you could do this with like 3 values. I mean, it'd be a lot harder, but I mean, you could do it. So the importance is when you're painting, let me pull up some, let me just pull up some art, right? Somebody post some art. Something they like that they didn't do. All right. So this, right? We're going to look at the values of this image. You can kind of tell what everything is. But if we look at the colors, the color scale versus the values, you can see that the darkest value is that red and the blue. Everything else, like his skin, the background, his beard, are all pretty close. So the importance of value in the painting, for instance, this one, well, that's more of a, whatever. It's more of a watercolor, but it's fine. So this one, if you look at the values is what makes the colors on the object make the object look like they have depth or are 3-dimensional. Right? So if you look at this arm right here, if we just pick those colors, right, it's kind of here in the middle. But if you're the one painting this and you're trying to figure out, oh, what color do I want this to be, or like what, like I know I want it to be green, but I don't know how dark it needs to be in order to shade it correctly. You kind of need to know the value that it's going to be at in order to make the object look three-dimensional. If we were to take this, here, let's color pick this again. If we were to take, oh, come on now. If we were to take this color and we were to say only paint it at the brightest value. Get my pen. And then we were to pick this color and only paint it at the brightest value. When we look at it in the saturation layer, they're basically the same thing. Because you go over here to the values, there's the value for that. There's the value for that. And while they do look different with the saturation layer on, they're so close that if you zoom out, you can barely tell. So it's important to see the value first. Or not necessarily first, but it's important to know it, right? Well, it still kind of counts. But besides the point, it still kind of looks the same, to be honest. But that's more saturation. So if we were to take this and turn it into a brightness or a color, whatever, you get the point. Yeah, so here's a good one. Right? You take the color out of it, because color is anywhere from 1 pixel right of far left on this square here. Anything in this is a color, right? But when you're wanting to make something look like a 3D object, if you pick, like, let's say like this here, this here, and we put those underneath the saturation layer, they look the same. Yeah, so the reason we look at these like this, rotten pizza, is because we want to get to that level, right? But like I said earlier, the thing that makes objects look three-dimensional is their value, not so much their color. Right? So, looking at this, that looks really awful. But so you can do this with anything, though, as I've displayed. You can do this with anime paintings. You can do this with Warhammer looking stuff, Monet paintings, this guy. And this guy would look more three-dimensional if these values were more far apart, depending on the lighting, right? So these values right here are kind of giving this kimono, kind of half off kimono shape. Or the illusion of shape and form. Excuse me. same thing here. These are essentially just geometric shapes. But if we didn't have, let me make a new layer. If we did not have this value, this white value here, where'd the shape go? Where did the structure and the form go? You know what I mean? Okay, so back to value, how to do a value study. I showed you how to pick your values out of the image by eyeing it. You need to limit the amount of values, otherwise it's going to take forever. And you also need to try to block in those values as best you can. And as you go, you can keep refining this. Like this is just very, 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 very basic, right? We know that it looks like kind of like this pool over here. And you can go in and you can be like, oh, these trees, what are those? And then eye those and then block those in. You can get the shading and highlights. That's a whole different thing, right? So when you're talking about shading, you're talking about shadow. So if we take this pole right here, that I blocked in. Oops. Right? And then you wanna show this highlight here, which is the sunlight coming through the trees onto this pole. I'm just gonna color pick this. Just kind of put it on there. Is the Twitch too quiet? I can turn it up. Sorry about that. I turned it up. Oh, that's a hard question to answer because there's a lot to rendering, but I would say it's one of the fundamentals of rendering for sure. It's not the end all be all, but it's definitely a place to start. Yeah, like let me look at someone's let me pull up someone's art from another server I'm in real quick. If I can find it. Okay, this right here. I think they worked on this for like 2 weeks. Okay. When they drew this originally, they started with the values. Only the values. And it looked a little bit something like this. Right? And they literally drew it this way first. They did a value painting, and then they just went in and they added their color. So I'd say, yeah, if you want to approach it that way, yeah, it can be. Hold on one sec. I have a mention and I can't find it. How different should the colors of our highlights and shadows be compared to the base colors? That's going to depend on the value of the highlight. So we can, let me make a new one. All right, let's just make a ball real quick, right? Okay, Okay, so we got our ball. God, this is really hard. I hate drawing with a mouse. All right. Come on. Why you do this? Okay. Maybe when I get it. All right, so we got our ball. And then we want to say we give it some light. Right? Well, that doesn't look very good. Whatever. All right, so we have our ball, right? If we're going to color this with value, and we've already painted it in value, right? Sorry. Okay, so we got our valued ball, and then we want to give it some color. Well, you can pick just the biggest, baddest color, and whatever the value of the color is with the most saturation, it's going to multiply with the values that you have already. So let's pick a dark value. We're going to give us a new layer and call this a multiply layer. We're just going to plop this color on here with the G pen. Right? So since we have a darker value on the color that we picked, the higher values on the desaturated become closer. But if we pick the lightest value of full saturation, the ball looks a bit more natural. But if you pick something in the middle, a good middle ground between saturation of color and value, you kind of get a weird, kind of like a weird mix. I don't know how to describe it. Okay, what time is it? Okay, I got a few minutes for questions, for more questions. But you can also mix this up too, by the way. Sure. Why is that a bad idea? Have you ever been to one of my reference drawing classes? Okay, yeah, just do that. Doesn't matter. Just time yourself, get what you can. Give yourself like 6 minutes or something and get what you can. Alright, you know if you did good or bad if you have objects in your image that you can tell what they are. Right? For instance, let's just find a beginner. Okay, actually, I have an idea. I have some stuff I can show you. Alright, so this guy I'm showing my own art. Sorry. This guy right here, I can't open a new tab. Oops. You can tell that he has volume based on the values that he's painted with, right? This dock right here, not so good. The values are kind of like all kind of similar, right? Let's see what else. If you got someone with like, here, I'll just paint something real quick. Oops. All right. So let's say we got a girl's face, right? We just got a face. This is our face. If you've got a face and all you can see is, oops. Where's my P? And all you can see is the eyes and the features that you've drawn on, and you cannot see any shape to this face, right? But then you go back and you pick a value that's far enough away from the initial to imply shadow, and thus giving you a bit of form to this 2D image, right? And you can kind of tell that this is a three-dimensional object now. That's what's going to determine if your value is good, right? So if we got, for instance, let me take this right here. Just going to color pick. So if we have this right here, oof, I need to start using my tools correctly. If your value of this post is all the same and you can't tell that it is in fact a kind of cube, not really a cube, what would you call that? A geometric shape, I guess. If you can't tell that it's a geometric shape when you look at it versus your photograph, then you kind of failed on the values on that part of the painting or the image, right? With value. Yeah, we're not worried about colors right now, though. We're just worried about value, right? So if you can imply that the image is what it is with just value on the scale, then you're good. You did your job. And the other part of it too is if you look at this chair, right? Oops. The values on this chair kind of blend together. So you might have to get creative when you're painting this chair with how you're going to do it, or even this towel, right? You're going to have to get creative with how to do it to imply that those values are blending naturally. So you could literally, if you wanted to, on a value painting, you could just go, again, don't color pick, but I am color picking. You could say, okay, let's say this is our copy chair. You know, when you're doing this as an exercise, you should do it. You should eye it as much as you can. But like I said, I don't have much time, so. Maybe take our pen and maybe give it some opacity. And then you can come back later and blend these. Right. But you could sketch it first if you want to. But in order to learn values better, I think it's kind of helpful just to paint it. Yeah, if you want to do it that way, you could also do it the opposite. The point is experimenting with value to try and learn how to display form. And then once you want to do your colors, like this one, right? If we don't have the color and all we have is the value, then we can go and we can pick this value right here. I say, oh, come on, clip. I want her to be kind of this skin color. And I can just go in here and I can go, oops, no opacity, whoops. I can just make a new layer, set to multiply, and I can just go boop. There she is. Right. Basically, yeah, you just pick like, okay, this girl's shirt is gonna be we're gonna give her a dark navy blue uniform. So you just pick a color. We go, okay. There's her dark navy blue shirt. And there's also gradient maps and stuff that you can learn. But yeah, essentially I think this is a bit too dark. Yeah, I mean that's true, but you could also sit there and tweak with it for a while. I'm not that good of a painter. That's why I'm learning this to teach you guys so that I can get better at it too. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, let's say this girl's shirt is green. You could literally just sit here and go, okay, well, that's dark right there. And then that's light right there. And this is the lightest part right here. You could do that, especially if you're like really good at this. You can do it, especially if you know values. But the point is to know values first. Yep. Right. Like, here, let me find something crazy. Now, that one was done with value. I pretty much know for a fact. Let me find one that's just straight up painting. And you can kind of tell, too, based on different art styles, what was done with value and what wasn't. Actually, apparently, this one was just painted with color from the get-go. But I would have guessed just from looking at this that it was done with value first. But apparently it wasn't. well, you're still using it. You're just skipping a step. But if you look at stuff like, what's her name? Let me sign in for a sec. That is what I am assuming. Learning history. I logged into the wrong account. Hate that. Learning history. Okay. So this person, this tutorial, which I can't show you because it's paid for. This artist, Livia Prima, makes their living doing Magic the Gathering, League of Legends, all that kind of stuff. And even their process, like the process for, let me find the picture. Where'd it go? Where are we going? The process for this painting is this tutorial that I was showing you just a second ago, right? And they started with value. Exactly. Because if you start with color and you're new and you don't know value, like it's not beaten to your head yet, then it's a lot harder to correct that later. You can kind of lose your forms a little bit, if you know what I mean. Anybody else? Yeah, it can. But that's up to you to correct. Like if you just want to make anime and stuff like that. Well, I mean, if you're talking about this stylized, you can already draw that no matter what. You just need to know how to draw a box and a circle, right? But if you're talking about like this stylized, this person has a pretty in-depth knowledge of form, shape, anatomy. I mean, debatable, but they know how form works and they know how value works, and they're approaching this like a painter. And then you could also look at stuff like, where'd my thing go? You can look at stuff like SpongeBob, right? SpongeBob still uses value to show the depth of his character, right? All of these characters have some sort of value applied to them. Excuse me. Even if you're doing something as stylized as SpongeBob, knowing the fundamentals such as form, anatomy, shape, value, you still need everything. So in order to break, for example, anime, right? When you look at people who are new at drawing and they go straight to anime, you see stuff like this, which is not terrible. But when you compare that to Let me see. Let me see. You compare that to something like Studio Trigger, you can tell just by looking at their stylized image. Let me find a good resolution one. Whatever, that's good enough. You can tell that they know anatomy, and whether they choose to break it or not is up to them. But because they have the fundamentals down so well, when they draw something, it looks, even though it's stylized, it still looks correct. Yeah. So like this character could have nothing on this shirt and it would still look good because the anatomy and the shape information is all there. Even if they don't show it 100%. There could be no well, I mean, if you look at this image, that's super low res. If you look at this image, there is hardly any detail, right? The only details are in the clothes a little bit, just like a tiny bit. All right, I got a couple more minutes. It doesn't have to be photographs that you do value studies on. Also, perspective, guys. Perspective is a huge one. Let me see. These are some perspective grids. You got your interior perspective grids. You've got vanishing point perspective grids. You've got horizon, single point, 2-point. These are things that you need to learn as well, because when you put your 2D painting in a 3D environment, such as like a street or a street corner like this, you need to know how that perspective affects the form of the 2D character that you are drawing. Such as if we had a character standing right here and she was pointing that way, well, her arm is extending several units this way. So this these diagonal perspective lines on this wall should be the guide for how much smaller her arm should get based on how many units her arm goes over, right? Yeah, you should do value studies on artists you like. You should do just basic like anatomy studies on artists you like. You should do reference drawings. You should do figure drawings and gesture drawings pretty much every day. Honestly, people say drawing every day is kind of bad, but I think you cannot hurt yourself by doing gesture and figure every day, if even just taking one day off a week. No, you just eye it. Just like with value, eventually you can just eye it. Just like with gesture drawings, eventually you eye it. It's the same thing with figure drawings. You can just eye it. Like me, when I draw a gesture drawing, I can just go, let me get a new, I can just go, okay, well, there's a head. There's where their jaw's pointing. There's their neck cylinder, and then that's the rib cage torso thing, and then we got the lower stomach, groin, legs. Arm starts with a ball joint at the shoulder. You got your triceps, biceps, and then you've got your arm, and there's where your hand connects to the arm. So you can just like totally eye it. Okay, guys, homework time. Who did the Shining homework? You can turn it in later if you want. But if anyone's got it done, I want to see it. That's okay, Skritsky. Nah, my homework's always due the next class. Unless it's like actual homework. Then it's due the same day the next week. And what I mean by actual homework is next Wednesday, I want you guys to have at least 3 value paintings or studies done from reference. Is there a channel to put it in? It's just kind of based on the class you're in. I know that they like tried to do like a Google Docs with homework, but it's like kind of, I think it's kind of abandoned. But for my classes, if you just go into a bot command and use !SCRUGG, I'll type it. The homework was to watch The Shining and then draw something inspired by it. Yeah, there's gonna be a recording, okay? Yeah, without the quotations in the bot command. I think someone said it's down right now or something. Cool. So next Wednesday, I want 3 value studies from everybody. And that's like an actual like series. Nah, I'm not worried about how good they are. I just want you guys to do it so that you can start to kind of get the right mindset, if that makes sense. Is that supposed to be me for real? If so, that's kind of close. If you look in the Sky People homework. That's pretty good. I like that. Here, I'll show it on the stream because I find that to be hilarious. All right, guys. Well, that's gonna be the end of the class. I gotta get back to work. Make sure you use the Scrags Conspiracy Theory Emporium section of the server to chat with each other about the homework or to hang out in the voice chat or whatever. Cool. 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 Cool.